Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. On a day that's been kind of a busy day for me, I took my car in to get some work done on it this morning, and then they had a cancellation from the eye doctor, so they got me in there today instead of July the 1st, which was a good thing. So I had to get that done this afternoon. So it's been a little bit busy, but got it all done, and here it is evening time, and I'm settled in, I think, for the day. I told you yesterday I was going to talk a little bit about me, where I come from, and a few things. I was born and raised in a small town called Caney, Kansas, which is down in the southeastern part of Kansas, really closer to South Central, but still on the eastern side of it. We're quite a ways from the Missouri line, about 60 miles or so. But we were only a mile off the Oklahoma line, so we were pretty close to being there. I was, like I said, I was born and raised there. I was the 9th out of 10 children, with 2 of them passing away in infancy before I was even born, and then being raised with 7 brothers and sisters all together. Most of them are all gone now, except for us, the 3 of us, 3 of the younger ones. Myself, my brother right older than me, and my younger brother, who's, I think, 5 years behind me in age. But, like I said, we're all that's left. But anyway, like I said, I grew up there. We grew up in a fairly large family. We grew up like most families, kind of a little bit on the poor side. We didn't have much. Raised our own food. Did things like that to help get us along. My father was a carpenter, so sometimes winter work was a little slower. So things were a little bit tighter, but we always managed to make it through. We always had food to eat. We always had clean clothes. My mother made sure that our clothes were tidy and were clean and were patched up if needed to be, or kept sewed up on anything that come unsewed, which didn't happen very often because we had our quote-unquote school clothes and our play clothes. You always changed out of one into the other. But so we always managed to be that way. I did finally graduate high school in the year of 1968, which was a long time ago to most of you. I mean, there's quite a few of you probably wasn't even around at that time, and the ones that were kind of like me, getting way up in age. But anyway, I made it through there. I never went to college. I went right out of there, right into the working world. And I worked my way through a lot of my early years of adulthood. Having worked in a variety of jobs, it seemed like I was never quite satisfied where I was at, so I'd move on pretty quickly. My grandson's kind of the same way, bless his heart. He seems to get bored with his jobs after a year or so, and he moves on. But the one he's on now, he hasn't. He's stayed with it, even though I think he's wanted to leave a time or two, but that hasn't happened yet. But anyway, as I said, we grew up there. I grew up. I got married in the year of 1972. We had a not a bad wedding. I mean, it was just my parents and her parents. Well, my mother, because my father was gone at that time. My father died when I was 15, so my mother kind of raised us two younger ones on her own, basically, because my younger brother was only 10 at the time. But anyway, we survived all that. Like I said, I got married in 72 with a small wedding. And like I said, my work was such I couldn't stay tied down too long for a job. But I did struggle through and last quite a while, working pretty regular. And somewhere I think along in 73, getting towards fall, I decided we need to move to Oregon. I had a sister out there, a sister out there at the time, and my brother, one of my brothers, lived out there at that time, so we kind of packed her up and moved out there. Stayed out there for a few months. My daughter was born out there in August of 74. Then in April of 75, when I got my income tax back, we had a little money, we packed it up and moved back to Caney. And I went to work then in the oil patch and stayed with it for a while, even though it was not, as most of you know, if anybody knows who's worked in that line of business, it's not easy. I worked on a pulling rig. We were pulling dead leases, which means that pipe had been in the ground for years and years, so it was not exactly easy to break loose and get it to come loose, but we always managed to do it and get it up, get it out of there. Kind of, like I said, hard work, hot in the summer, cold in the winter, but anyway, I was doing that, and then I decided there had to be an easier way of making a living, so I went to driving a truck for a linen company. And I did that until the opportunity come along to kind of help myself and increase my wage by working in a camper, Comet Mobile Homes, campers, what we made, and working for them as an electrician. That's where I got my electrical start from. Learned to do that, and I stayed with them for quite a while. During that time, after, like I said, I got married in 72, and in 77, 5.5 years after I got married, and in November of 77, my wife and her mother and her sister were all going to work. They worked in Barsville, Oklahoma, which was 20 miles south of where Caney was. And of course, where I was working was in Coffeyville, Kansas, which was 16 miles west of where I live. So we left at two different times and went two different ways, but on November the 23rd of 1977, as they were all going to work, there happened to be a guy who decided maybe a couple of drinks wouldn't hurt him. So he had a little. and decided that after working all night and after having a little bit of drink, he got tired. And I guess he went to sleep behind the wheel or whatever. Anyway, he ended up coming at him head first and hitting him head first, or hitting him head on. Killed my wife, my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law, all three. The unfortunate thing is, or I guess fortunate for him, is he walked away basically unscathed. And somehow or the other, because his parents had some political pull, he walked away from the accident unscathed. He walked away from the punishment of the accident unscathed. He never even spent a night in jail, even though, like I said, had been drinking, and it was proven he had been drinking when they took the test. But somehow the prosecuting attorney forgot to bring that up during the trial, which within a few months after that trial, the prosecuting attorney was a judge. But that's politics. That's the way politics go. If you've got the money and the clout, and you can make things happen, you can get things cleared away from you. So anyway, so my child at the age of 3 and I were kind of on our own, except luckily my mother had stepped in and helped me take care of my daughter and get her raised and get her through everything. 1981, when I was working once again, like I said, I'd been kind of off and on job sites. After my wife was killed, I went on ahead and spent the rest of the spring on into close to summer working for Comet, but then I went out on my own and started back in the roofing business, which I did part-time off and on for all them years. And then in 1980, the latter part of it, things were getting a little tight, money was getting a little tight. So I went to work as a custodian at the school to help supplement my income. I was working there when I happened to meet a 6th grade teacher who was single. We started dating. We ended up getting married. That one lasted 2 years before it ended. By then we had moved to Texas. So we were living down there then when the divorce happened. As far as I know, she's still living down there. When we separated, my daughter and I moved back to Katy. Luckily, I'd kept my house up there all that time because my mother was living in it, so I had a place to go back to, so it's not like I come back completely homeless at that time, but like I said, I come back and then got kind of back into the routine of trying to get my daughter raised and trying to get work settled out. At that particular time, unemployment was extremely high all over the United States, and jobs were kind of hard to come by, so it took me quite a bit to get back to working and doing much. I went back into the roofing and what have you, and stayed with it for a few more years with doing kind of side jobs to help me through of doing other things. And like I said, I got my daughter raised, and we got her through college and whatnot, and she ended up having a child, which is my grandson, and then she actually wasn't married at the time she had my grandson. She got married to a guy that was in the Army. He ended up adopting my grandson, so my grandson, was raised under his care for a few years, several years, about 10 years, I think they were together. They ended up divorced. And she moved back. By then I had already ended up, I think I've mentioned it once before, of going into some very deep depression, some very severe mental issues and what have you, and I ended up losing everything. And that's when I ended up in the homeless shelter for a while. As a matter of fact, I was there 13 months before I finally got my Social Security and got out and got my own place. But and then that's right after that is when her and her husband divorced. They lived in Hawaii at the time, so she came back home, and she ended up coming up there where I'm at now and going to work for the Army. Of course, she'd worked for them down there, so she went to work for them over on Fort Riley base. So her and my grandson moved up here, and then she was having a little bit of a struggle raising him, so I decided that maybe I could come up and be a help or be a hindrance or be something. Anyway, I moved up here, and I've been up here ever since, and that's been, I think, 15, 16 years now that I've been up here, living up here. So that's somewhat about my life, not a whole lot, but at least you know a little bit about what was going on. My mother passed away in 95, so that kind of set me back for a while, but I made it through all that period of time. So like I said, I've been up here ever since then. I've had my Social Security ever since I semi-retired at the age of 55, 56, whenever my depression took over and I ended up in the hospital. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. You'll probably hear more and more facts as time goes along, because I kind of ramble sometimes about a lot of them. But anyway, I want to thank you all for listening and for hearing me out. I hope you all have a great day, and a greater tomorrow, and the greatest rest of your life you can have. Thank you.